Welcome to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. We are the go-to resource for leaders looking to greatly improve their communication skills, whether it's one-on-one interactions, team settings, public speaking, or your digital communication. By improving these skills, leaders can create stronger connections and drive positive change within their organization. Each and every episode, we sit down with leaders from various fields, just like you're grabbing a cup of coffee with them. We dive into real, practical conversations. Our goal is to help you transform your communication skills so you can lead more effectively, build stronger relationships, and make a lasting impact. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's learn together. Well, how can laughter transform your leadership? Do leaders who laugh more enjoy their work more? Do they enjoy the people they work with more? And then here's the even bigger question. What prevents you from actually laughing in the workplace? Are some of us just not wired to laugh? Do we not find joy in things? Do people who don't laugh, are we more productive? Do we succeed more? Is there such a thing as too much laughter? Well, I am so excited to dive into all of this today on the Speak with People podcast. We are interviewing a guest that I have just been so incredibly excited to have, and put the ask out there. He graciously said yes, and I have been following him for a very long time. I mean, not only is he just an absolutely phenomenal communicator, he's done so much work with laughter. And I mean, I could go into all the thing, but I'll let him share the story. Adam, I just want to welcome you to the Speak with People podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. And it almost sounded like you were stalking me, but I'm not worried.
Well,
No,
yeah, it was going to get there if I would have kept going. So
no, I really love your podcast, and I like the focus, speak with people, because so many times, whether you're a comedian or a speaker or a master of ceremonies, you speak at people, but speaking with them is so much more powerful. So thank you for having me on.
absolutely. Well, I love that. I thought I came up with the phrase. I thought of it, maybe about 10 years ago. And then I realized, oh, that's right. There's nothing new under the sun.
That's right. That's right.
But I loved it. Well, hey, before we hop in, I mean, you've done, I mean, so much work with emceeing, with speaking, with comedy. Would love for you to just share with our listeners a little bit more about who you are, what you do, what's got you to this place in life.
Well, thank you. I've been doing this about 3 decades plus now, and my mom still wonders if I'm going to get a real job. Uh, and so there's a bit of an entrepreneurial background. As a young man, I was a youth minister, which is almost like being a comedian. And then I was on this speech and debate team in college, and that had a big impact on me because one of the categories that we competed in was called impromptu speaking, where imagine you got like a fortune cookie, you crack it open, and there were 3 quotations, and you had 2 minutes to prepare a 5-minute talk. And I feel like I make a lot of my living doing that very thing. So even though I'm
Wow.
very, yeah, I may be very prepared when I'm hosting a corporate event or a fundraiser or something, but the key is like your title, speaking with people so that it doesn't feel like a monologue, but it feels like a dialogue. One other piece that I'll share that was really impactful on me growing up was I grew up involved in this club in Hollywood, California called the Magic Castle.
Mm.
And when it's a private club for magicians, and you'll see people like Steve Martin there and Neil Patrick Harris and just great entertainers. And I was 17 years old, and I was so nervous, Jason. My hand was shaking as I was trying to put the card in the secret compartment. I didn't know if I'd pass the audition. And the leader, Diana Zimmerman, who's still a mentor to me, she said, "Your magic's not that great, but you're funny. We're going to let you in the club." And like 2 years later, I find myself assisting David Copperfield on a
Oh,
TV special. And so I've been very fortunate. I've had some great mentors and experience, but the laughter factor is really where it's at for me. When you can get people smiling and laughing, you're already feeling connected with them.
wow. Boy, I love that. We have a few things in common. I was also a youth minister long ago. So I know the joy.
We could start a support group, maybe.
Yes. I love that. We'll do a whole podcast series and Facebook group. We'll have the whole thing going.
I think there's something, whether you're a teacher, or youth minister, or volunteer, if you can communicate with young people, and I think
Ooh,
humor and engagement is so key. Like I remember one night I was at Caesar's Palace in Lake Tahoe and I was feeling all great about myself. And the next morning I was speaking at a junior high or middle school and I was doing a lot of the same material, but I'm like, wow, this is a much tougher crowd. And so some of these experiences we have in our younger days can really impact if we take the lessons with us.
yes.
It can be very powerful.
Yes. One of my best, after I was youth minister, I spoke in public schools for a long time for assemblies. And one of my best memories, I'm getting ready to speak in front of 600 middle school students, and the principal hands me the microphone, and a sixth grade boy in the very front row takes both of his legs and he puts them right behind his head. And just rows of kids are gone. Like I, like he 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 won. He won.
Oh,
How do you follow that?
yeah, sometimes you just get, it's like they teach you in improv is you say yes and so you have to acknowledge the elephant or the pretzel boy in the room, you know?
I love it. So especially as a public speaker, but even as a leader in my everyday life, I've kind of operated under the premise that if I laugh with someone, if I'm a public speaker, I get them to laugh. I help them laugh with me. Or if I'm, one on one with someone or with my team and we laugh together, that laughter builds trust. What do you think about that? What role does laughter play, especially? I mean, I know we just talked about. I asked you about two different segments, but just talk to us about how the power of laughter and what it can actually do for our leadership.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so many research scientists are validating over and over again that humor's great medicine, but I think beyond that, it's who we are as human beings. I mean, look at the word humor and the word human, they have the same root. And
Mm.
even the word comedy and communication or comedy and community, same root. And so it's hard to feel disconnected with someone when you're laughing with them.
Oh,
And just like your show title, I think is so instructive. I think laughing with people is far more powerful than laughing at people.
oh,
There's a time and a place for sarcasm
sure.
and parody and that kind of thing. But as a communicator and as a leader, I want to laugh with people. So one of the secrets, you don't have to wait till the end of the podcast to get one of these juicy secrets here. But one of the secrets is I have found that laughing at what other people say
Mm.
is maybe more powerful than being funny myself. I know that I can make people laugh. I could take a handheld microphone, go into an audience and do what comedians call crowd work. But when I laugh at someone else's humor, when I appreciate something that's happening in an audience, if I'm giving a presentation or hosting an event, that to me is the real magic because now it feels like something magical is happening right here, right now, that can't be replicated anywhere else. It's not sitting back and watching a TV show or something or a movie where I'm being passive.
Wow.
It's it's happening right now. That's one of the secrets I think also to improv is because it's unscripted, people feel like I can't believe this is happening right now. It just feels like you're part of a very special moment.
Wow. Boy, I love that. You're so correct in just the power of that. Why do you think some leaders they just and I don't know the percentage, but it just seems like they're void from laughter and maybe joy hasn't, quite come around to knock on their soul and it just, they just exude seriousness and maybe not even seriousness, but just I don't have time for laughter. What do you think you found in your leadership why people get to that place?
I think that people mistake leadership with being a boss, and boss has a more negative connotation. But what I'm getting at is people work under me. So if I'm using humor, I have to talk down to them.
Ooh.
Where the opposite is true. I love this little saying. I don't know if you've heard this, but intimacy can also be intimacy.
Mm.
And so you unveil, when you reveal, like we know from Brene Brown and other great authors and experts, when you are vulnerable. I'll give you a quick example from my own career. Many years ago, I raised some funds, and we did a independent film that was a parody of multi-level marketing and some of the kind of some of those are very good businesses, but some of them can be like get rich quick schemes. So
Mm-hmm.
long story short, I of course because I was the director and the co-writer of the movie, I cast myself in the movie, right? So I could go onto a platform and say, "Hey, I was in a movie." And I've done that before, and it's like, okay, well, you're kind of bragging. But when I say, and this is a true story, I say, my acting was so bad, I got cut out of my own movie. People laugh like you did, but they also feel like, oh, I can relate to this guy
Yep.
because
Yep.
we link we link together over failure even more than success.
Wow.
This one of the powerful spiritual secrets, you might say, of the 12-step recovery group is humor. Is my grandfather, who was a drinker for 40 years and then got sober for the next 45 years of his life, but he would tell me sayings from Alcoholics Anonymous. For example, they would say, "Pour me, pour me, pour me a drink," and that kind of shared pain is where a lot of
Mm.
great humor comes from. Really, when you're making someone laugh, you're saying, "Can you identify with this? Because I identify with you," and that's where the bond happens. So, to
Wow.
me, the best humor is a bridge and not a battering ram.
Wow. Wow. Absolutely. And when we do sometimes, and I've experienced it, and I know probably some of our listeners have, but we have when we have experienced humor in the workplace, we have probably experienced it as a battering ram. I mean, what a that analogy is so powerful because we've all been on the other end of
Yeah,
the biting hard, you know, humor
right.
at someone.
You know, sadly, our political arena is battering ram style, and it just isolates us. Where there's the saying I'm sure you've heard that a smile is the shortest distance between two people.
Mm.
So one fun thing I'll do sometimes when I'm giving a keynote speech is I'll have the entire audience stand up and I say, put a smile on your face. And I'll invite your viewers and listeners to even do this at home, unless you're driving. I don't recommend it. But what I invite people to do is put a smile on their face, look up to the ceiling, put their hands up, and do their best to feel bad. Like when you're smiling and looking up and focused up, it's almost a physiological impossibility to feel bad. And so my suggestion is for people to smile and even laugh, even when it might not feel genuine at first,
Mm.
because pretty soon it becomes genuine. I'm sure you've heard of laughter, like laughter yoga, for example. They don't have a stand-up comedian or a comedy magician entertaining them. What happens is one or two people just begin to laugh, and it's just contagious. And pretty
Wow.
soon, the entire group is laughing, and they're feeling less stress, and they're feeling more connected. And so, maybe the big lesson here is don't wait for the right feelings to come to take the
Mm.
action. Don't wait until you have taken a comedy class to start tapping into your own sense of humor. Don't wait till you feel like having fun to just start acting in a more fun, upbeat way, and the feelings will follow.
Wow. Wow. So powerful. I love what you said about smiling. My grandmother, when I was young, would say there's only two types of people in the world: beautiful people and ugly people. And the only difference are beautiful people smile. And
That's so good.
all
That's
these
so
years
good.
later, I'm like, boy, grandma also told me sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you. I'm like, okay, grandma, you missed the mark on that one, but
Yeah,
smiling, you killed it.
I can tell I would love your grandma, but I have to agree with you. Words are stones, or they can be beautiful gems. It depends how
Right.
you use them, right? So, how can I use my words in a way that lifts people up? And so, not only can laughter link us, but it can also lift us. And we have
Oof.
to be really careful here. So, I'll give you an example of what I call in jokes, like inside humor.
Mhm.
People can feel so lifted and encouraged when they have this shared experience. Like you've used the word wow several times, and that's like one of my favorite words. And so I say to an audience, like let's say I'm emceeing an event and someone gives an incredible performance. I'll walk up to the platform and I'll say, wow. And then I'll say, I'll say it backwards. Wow.
Hmm.
And so you and I now have this bond about the word wow. So if I were
Yep.
to send you a note and say, wow, we're going to have this shared thing. And so that kind of thing would not play at a comedy club if I just said, wow. But for you and I, because we now have this shared experience, we bond over that and we feel lifted up like, hey, someone is on the same wavelength as I am.
Wow. Goodness great. And that's, I just said it again.
Yeah, you
Oh,
said it back.
you're right. It's just so powerful. I love that. Yeah, I could be wrong here. Help me, with this, but especially switching gears towards public speaking and events. But being a MC or a master of ceremonies, I mean, I think it's more difficult than actually being a keynote or having a breakout or those kind of things because you're being a bridge, you're weaving everything together. And yet I speak now at so many corporate events where, they just kind of tasked, hey Bob, why don't you be the MC? And Bob's just sort of, and you're like, I don't know what's happening. I mean, what do you think about that role? And, talk to
I'm
us a little bit about that.
thankful to Bob because I get a lot of
Yes.
work. I get a lot of work the year after Bob MCs. And
Yes.
it's no bad on Bob, but it really is a science, and maybe more appropriately, it's a fine art because as the MC, you're not the star, you're the cement, and so you're
Wow.
linking the prior speaker to the next presenter to the VIP, but you're always keeping in mind what's the mission of our meeting, and you have to have enough confidence to be the orchestrator, but you don't want to come across as the prima donna. I never think of myself as the star of the show. I want to take that spotlight and put it on the organization or on the donors or on the salespeople or the insurance brokers or whoever the audience is, and I want to celebrate them. And then I'll get applause and hopefully I get paid, but I'd much rather have them say, not say that guy was the best MC ever. I'd love to hear that, but what I'd rather have them say is like, "We're the best people ever.
Wow. Yes,
Our organization rules." You know.
absolutely. Well, that's such a win too. If you're able to communicate in such a way that the spotlight is on other people.
Right.
I mean, what a win-win, and just what a great model of leadership. It's so difficult too because you're building an immediate connection, and then you're able to kind of weave it through. Any advice you'd give? I find myself speaking in small rooms for financial advisors. We're talking about client communication skills, but typically there's somebody that will introduce, or they'll introduce the sponsor of the event, and that person is typically a little nervous, and they're trying to figure out any words of wisdom for the person who's like, I'm not up in front of people a ton, but I'm up in front enough, and I want to communicate as clearly and articulately as I can. Any wisdom for them?
Yes, great question. I think maybe the number one key is they will enjoy it when you enjoy it. And so if you feel nervous, think about. I had a friend who said, I told him, I said, look, I've been doing this like 30 years, and Doug, I still get nervous. And he said, Adam, good. That means you care. And so
Right.
don't confuse nervousness with inadequacy. The great performers, I think it was Miles Davis who said, if you're nervous, it means you're paying attention. At the same time, I do recommend over preparing. And by that, I don't mean bringing a big notebook to the podium or something like that, but I want to know who's in the audience. What's the mission of our meeting? Are we working from a written agenda? Then I can feel free to just kind of relax and be in the moment. But just like anything else, like you've done so many podcasts, you're very comfortable. I feel like we're having a friend to friend conversation. But I'm guessing the first time or two you did it, it probably felt awkward, right?
Oh,
And
it was
so
rough.
I think for whether it's emceeing or using your humor, the confidence comes from repetition and practice. Like you might try out a joke, it might even be a dad joke or something, and you might not get a good reaction. But if you keep doing it a few times, this is the secret of great stand-up comedians like Jerry Seinfeld, is they're road testing the material before they do it in front of a paying audience or a TV special. In the same way, if you're going to MC an event it's hard to practice that because all the other players aren't there, but you can still practice it and rehearse it in terms of your introductions of other VIPs or speakers,
Right.
how you're how you're going to open the program, how you're going to close the program. But back to your original question, the number one tip I would share would be if you're having fun, they're having fun.
So right on. Uh, Absolutely. I thought I was going to kill it. I was in Charleston a couple weeks ago, and I was speaking to some financial advisors, and they put me after lunch, which is not always my favorite time slot. Right after bread and baked potatoes and those sort of things. And then the room was at 79 degrees, and I walked up to the event planner. I'm like, is there any way? They're like, we're struggling with the air right now. And I'm like, okay, gonna have to bring a lot of energy. But right before me, they did a retirement for one of the advisors and they brought out champagne for everybody. So I thought, whoo, okay, maybe this will settle them down a little bit. So I led with a joke about I love to follow alcohol. And I, I thought people would laugh. Like they were just calm. And then I was trying to get something out of them. So I was like, you know what? Next up, we're going to bring out shots. And
Oh,
that
that's
got like
funny.
a couple laughters, like couple of the guys were like, oh, now I'm interested, but that was
Now
just
you have
like,
my attention.
yeah, it's like I just bombed. I I'm I don't think I'm a naturally funny person. I don't have great one-liners, but when I tell stories, I bring people into the picture. So talk to us about, people, using stories, using actual life situations as happened to them. Give us, your keys telling a great story using humor inside the story.
I think it's what you just shared is so great. I know you're a powerful storyteller and you're such a likable guy, but maybe you're not into the zippy one liners. That's totally fine. I think it's a mistake to think that you have to try every style of humor. I'll give you what I've identified as what I call the five humor tactics. And what you want to do is find the one you're most comfortable with. One is this in jokes thing where you just start to identify what's happening in the room, what's happening with the group, and then you call back to it. And people, remember the time that Tony tried to photocopy his ham sandwich, and again, that would never play at a comedy club, but in that group where people
Right.
remember, it takes on legendary laughter proportions. So that's one tactic is in jokes. Another one that you just touched on is what I call amplify. And that's where you're telling a story and you're combining maybe something factual with some exaggeration and certain emphasis, and you're just enjoying that story. And the laughter will come. One time I was on a flight with Jay Leno and I asked him questions like you're asking me. I said, what's your number one tip? And he said something I have always remembered. He said, increase your LPMs. And I said, Jay, what's LPMs? And he said, laughs per minute. So if you're doing a 5 minute story, you don't want to wait till the last end of the story for the laugh. If you're going for humor, you want to have LPMs laugh. And when I'm writing a book, I want laughs per page. So that's the second tactic, amplifying it. Another tactic is wordplay. And this could be puns, it could be funny acronyms, it could be funny sayings like you and I have been using the word wow a lot. So that becomes a fun wordplay thing for us. So believe it or not, I'll share the stage with a New York Times bestselling author or a celebrity. But one of the things the audience might remember is that I hand out five dad jokes and have different dads, sometimes moms, read them. And then we get applause from the audience. As silly as that is, people love that wordplay. And let's see if I remember the other two. One is poking fun. This is the trickiest one because it's so easy to poke fun at other people's faults or hypocrisies, but your best target is the person you see in the mirror. And so if
Oh,
you
yeah.
can share your own failures, that's funny. Talk about you never ever want to go after somebody else's weight or religion or something like that. But if you can poke fun at some of your own foibles, people absolutely love it. So those are some of the humor tactics. I'll give you one more that's maybe my favorite, and it just always works. And it's the power of surprise. And so I'll give you an example. I used to work at a magic shop, and the most famous magic shop where I grew up was called Hollywood Magic. I drove down there one day to see this legendary master of sleight of hand. Earl Nelson was his name, and Earl was not a comedian. He almost had the personality of what you'd think of a mortician, but people were laughing and laughing, and I thought, what is it? He's not doing jokes. He's not doing comedy gags, rubber chicken, any of that. But the reason people were laughing was he was surprising them with the magic, and that's just our reaction to surprise.
Right.
And so if you can break the pattern at your next meeting, if you could wear a different outfit, if you could greet people in a different way, you'd be pleasantly surprised at how you'll get laughs just by doing the unexpected.
Oh, I love that. So important. Talk to us for a second about, and we kind of touched on it, but self-deprecating humor. Where's the line? How far do you go? You know, Sometimes I can say I've gone too far, and I'll have my wife in the audience or my mother or a staff member or somebody, and they're like, "Yeah, that was too far." So I've had to learn how to dial that back. But speak to us about, what's some of the boundaries and the things to remember about that.
Well, I think the first rule of thumb just to always keep in mind, especially when you're doing it in public speaking, is if in doubt, leave it out. Just if in doubt, like there are times when I'm walking up to the platform when I'm emceeing and I have all these funny ideas and I say, no, 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 because if in doubt, leave it out. So it's a lot easier though to get away with self-deprecating humor because you're the target. And little tip is comedy always has a target of some kind, almost always. But if you make the target yourself, that's a good instinct. I would say you don't want to get into private stuff, sexual stuff, family stuff that your other family members wouldn't like. I did a joke a few months ago and and it wasn't inappropriate at all, but my daughter was like, I'd rather you not do that. I said, hey, no problem. If in doubt, leave it out. And so my son is like, oh yeah, you can tell that story about me. And so knowing your audience, I mean, that's almost point one of any good public speaking course, right? Is know your audience. So if you feel like the audience is going to go, ooh, that's a little gross or too personal, then just leave it out, or just cut out the stuff that might be too risky to share. But I'd say 90% of the time when you're making fun of yourself, you're on safe ground.
Oh, I love that. Such great wisdom. I had a little bit of a mess up. Where was I? I can't remember where it was a couple weeks ago. But typically my 20-year-old son travels with me, and he'll shoot some video and he'll do reels after our speaking engagements and those kind of things. And I tell a story about my love for Tom Brady and how Tom Brady moved to Tampa. I moved to Tampa. And then I show a picture of all my Tom Brady stuff on my office wall. And then I show a picture of my bedroom. And as a joke, I put a Tom Brady cutout next to my bed, just to say this is how much I love Tom Brady. And then if that's not enough, we do have a Tom Brady pillow on our bed. And I said, this is the level that I love Tom Brady. And then I just took a little step further. And I'm not, you know, crude, when I do comedy or try attempt those kind of things. But I was just, my mind was going, and I didn't slow down. And I said, I remind my wife, it's not bad to have Tom Brady in our bed. And I thought, I was laughing. I was like, come on, that's funny.
Yeah.
Especially after the setup. And the room was just, and I could see my 20-year-old in the back going,
Oh yeah. And
I
just
thought,
so you know, even though I'm known as a humorist, I have a book coming out about humor. I've made every possible mistake you could ever imagine. I've said the wrong thing at the wrong time, or I said something that I thought would be funny to everyone. It was maybe there's 500 people in the room and only three people were in on the inside joke, and
right.
so it's a learning thing, just like anything, like you're doing sales or public speaking or just about anything, is you just get better by doing it all the time. And even though I've done something like 4,000 presentations, I still get nervous every time, Jason. And there's a great saying about that: when you're feeling butterflies in the stomach, just get them to fly in formation. And so I kind of reframe that nervousness as this is energy that I
Fly
have.
information.
This is an adrenaline rush that's going to help me, not hurt me. and
Yes.
you're always in the right frame of mind when you're thinking, how does this benefit them? Does it inspire them? Does it make them laugh? Does it engage them? Um, yeah,
Oh, I love that. So you started cleancomedians.com.
yeah.
And so I've never, I love comedy. I've done a couple of open mic nights, such a different world, but I've been pushing myself lately to try more because, I find myself with my keynotes or, I've got to end and I got to get to the punch quicker. And doing those open mic nights have really, I mean, they've taught me a lot. What do you think of that? Would you encourage public speakers? Is that a means, you know, to exercise to be able to get better? Is it just for comedians? What do you think?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, you have to sometimes you might have to take a shower after you go to a comedy club because the material can be just so raunchy, inappropriate. Not always, but I think more than comedy clubs, it's just getting stage time. So whether that's your Rotary Club or your
Yes.
church or your school where you volunteer and maybe you're on a panel, but you say, could I host the panel? It's just looking for opportunities. One of my favorite bands of all time, you might have heard of a little group called the Beatles. And they did that Malcolm Gladwell thing even before Malcolm Gladwell talked about the 10,000 hours. I don't know if they did exactly that many, but everyone thinks they became these big stars on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1964. And what most people don't know is they were working 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week in these little clubs in Hamburg, Germany. And they're doing cover songs, they're doing original songs, so that when the big break came, they were already polished, tight act. And so you want to get as much stage time, whether you're a speaker, entertainer, comedian, magician, whatever it is just get that stage time. Nothing can replace it.
Oh, I love that. My former world, I was a pastor, so I spent a lot of time in church world, and so last 2 years I've started to speak with people, and now I'm primarily in the corporate world and speaking at events and those things. So I was lately a couple months ago I did an open mic night at a comedy club, and I thought, okay, this I'm gonna try out some things, and I put it on Facebook, and some couples from my former church came. One of them being this sweet, sweet elderly couple, and I happened to be number 19 out of 20 that evening. And every single, I mean, I thought to myself, how do I wash my brain? Just what you talked about. The crude level, I was like, there's a way, like there's a way to be funny without this level of disgust. I was just really shocked. And then I look over and this sweet elderly couple, I'm like, why did you come this night?
We started Clean Comedians many years ago, and the original founder, Kerry Travanovich, just had this great insight. It was like we came up with the motto from Kerry's inspiration, and this is the amazing thing. Kerry Travanovich is a physical comedian, like a pantomime artist. So he's getting audiences roaring with laughter without even saying any words. And so what we started to realize is if you rely on variety instead of vulgarity, you can get laughs with a pencil, with a magic trick, with a visual aid, a PowerPoint, with a quiz show. I'm about to do an event where we're going to do the newlywed game for not so newlyweds, and I know I don't have a script for it. I have an outline, but I know that interviewing these couples and hearing their stories and just chatting with them, I just know we're going to have a lot of laughs. And so we came up with the motto, it doesn't have to be filthy to be funny.
Wow. Well, Nate Bargatze is definitely proven that out, with his specials. It's just something else. Okay, last question. I could ask you, 20 more, but this has just been amazing. Is there one piece of advice that you'd give people, just starting out in the speaking or, comedy world, that if you could go back, I really wish I would have done this or exercised this more or realized this?
Oh, I could spend a lot of time answering that. But I'll give you two answers to that great question. The first is, in real estate, they say it's three rules, right? Location, location, location. As a professional speaker, the three rules are demo video, demo video, demo video. And if you look at that word demonstration, demo is at the heart of it, which means
Yes.
it's not just testimonials of people saying he's great or she's funny. It's actually give us a taste of what you're going to do. Give us a demonstration by way of video. And so we could spend a whole hour or two just talking about that. The second thing I would tell speakers is you want to decide if you're more of an inspirational speaker or an informational speaker. There's no right or wrong on that. So in other words, if you're an expert, let's say you're an author, you might be sharing practical takeaways that you want people to leave with. The 7 habits of highly effective people, right? I don't think of Stephen Covey or other great speakers like that as necessarily inspirational. I don't leave that going, I can change the world, but I leave saying, I got some real practical takeaways here. An inspirational speaker is more about the feeling that you leave with. The informational speakers focus more on the content. And so the sooner you can decide which lane you're in, the better. And sometimes there'll be a mix of both. But I always like to reverse engineer my talks and think, what is the outcome that I want the audience to have? And then I reverse engineer that in my presentation.
Mm, so good. Okay, let me ask you very quickly some rapid fire questions. We're building this online communicators library where they can go and access new articles and podcasts. And is there a favorite speaker that you have? I know that's probably a little bit difficult, but is there somebody that you always look back to and recommend them, to other people?
Well, when you think of the old time classics, you got to have Zig Ziglar in that conversation. And he just imprinted his personality and he was so infectious. And he had the great one liners like unassertive salespeople have skinny kids. One of my favorite current speakers is a former pastor. We were talking about our background in youth ministry, Dave Stone. A lot of people don't know his name, but he is an incredible storyteller. And so, what I notice about these great speakers is, and sorry, this is a long answer to a rapid fire question, but
It's great.
they soar with their strengths. So
Mm,
Dave Stone is not trying to be a sales expert like Zig Ziglar, and so stay in your lane because it's actually a very big lane.
yes. Yes. I love that. Is there if you're a podcast listener, is there a podcast that you love, either guilty pleasure or development, that you tend to recommend?
It's funny. I do magic, I do comedy, but I'm more into like philosophy and theology, and so maybe that is a tip in a way. Is study in areas outside of your main interest because you might bring in like I might bring in a story about Friedrich Nietzsche, not usually like at a real estate convention or something, but I might bring in an example that I learned in the world of chess, for example, that has application in the moment. And so I love what Mark Twain said. It takes me 3 weeks to prepare a good impromptu speech. And so you always want to be reading and learning and discovering, and that will inform your speeches.
Exactly. And then is there a book? Is there a book, that you recommend? Hey, every leader, you've got to have read this at least once in your life.
Oh, so many. I think it's hard to top Robert Cialdini's book, Influence. It's a man. I put in my I probably I don't know how many. I probably read over 1,000 business leadership type books, but his book Influence. You have to remember that everybody's tuned into the same podcast, the same radio station called WIIFM. What's in it for me? So by understanding Cialdini's principles of influence, you can think through your message and use his different persuasion buttons to get that message across.
Wow. Wow. I love it. Well, I can't thank you enough. This has been, I mean, a masterclass. This is going to be so helpful for our listeners. I have loved every second. I know they will. Could you tell us where we can send our listeners to find out more about you and your upcoming book, Laughter Factor, in the spring? I can't wait for that to be published. And if you have a launch team, let me know because I would love to help
Oh,
spread
I
the
really
word.
Yeah. Yeah. So the book is titled the laughter factor, the five tactics, the five humor tactics, I should say, to link, lift, and lead. And so we really unpack all those five ways you can be funny. Um, I think LinkedIn is a good place to keep up with me because I post almost every day. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's informative. And if someone's interested in booking a funny speaker or entertainer and they don't want to have to worry about feeling embarrassed for their organization, they can just simply go to cleancomedians.com.
I love it. Well, Adam, thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate it. This was just wonderful, and can't wait to connect in the future.
And before I let you go, I think on the count of three, we should say the word wow together. What do you think? All right, here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Wow. Thank you for listening to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. Thank you for leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And thank you for every like and every comment. Every single time you cut and copy a link and send it to a coworker or a friend, it absolutely means the world, and it helps each other transform our communication skills. Lastly, don't forget about a great resource that's available to you: our communication skills library. At the end of every episode, we ask each guest their favorite speaker, their favorite podcast, their favorite book, and we've compiled all of those resources together to give you an amazing library to continue your growth and development. Thank you again for being a listener and for being a part of the Speak with People community.